Welcome to Play Your Best Game. I'm with Glen Carlson, the co-founder and director of Dent Global. G'day, Glennie. How are you, mate?
Mate, good to be here.
It's nice to be here, and it's nice
And it's been too long. It's been too long.
It has been too long, but it's also nice to have the roles switched around because you've interviewed me plenty of times as one of your alumni, but I've never had the chance to interview you. So I look forward to having a good chat with you and understanding the tools and the way that you go about playing your best game.
Mate, it's my favourite topic.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Now, tell me, what does accountability mean to you?
To me, and I like the word less and less, but it's absolutely essential. But what I really like is the word camaraderie. So for me, maybe it's semantics, right? But I mean, to answer your question, accountability is having someone other than yourself holding you to the standards you set for yourself, right? And so I have a board of directors and I have a management team and I have all these people that are holding me accountable to what I say I'm going to do. And that's accountability.
Absolutely.
But the word accountability can feel a little heavy. I don't think people are like, oh, I want accountability. Like they might say they want it because they kind of know they need it. But I think of a sporting team, right? And it's like, do they have accountability? Yeah, but do they think of it in those terms? No. Do they have camaraderie? Yes. Do they think of it in those terms? Yes. Does that create accountability? Yes.
So tell me about camaraderie.
Yeah, well, I think camaraderie for me is, well, first of all, anytime camaraderie comes together, which is essentially like we're all in this together, right? It's that concept and we're all in this together. Well, what's this? So it implies that there's some kind of meaningful mission, purpose, vision,
journey
that we're all on together.
Yep.
Right. And there's like the band of brothers and sisters. There's that kind of, camaraderie. There's that alignment, if you like, that comes as a result of that meaningful vision and purpose. And that, I think if you can get the meaningful vision and purpose right, and you can get enough people, as Jim Collins would say, on the bus that are aligned to that take extreme ownership, that take personal responsibility, that are self-initiated, that don't need to be told what to do and micromanaged, if you like. Well, then what I find happens is it creates a culture of which accountability is a byproduct.
Right.
And that has been what I've been sort of working to develop in our company over the last sort of 5 years or so. Because, I mean, understood accountability is absolutely essential.
Yep.
And when we were a small business, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, that was the mindset. But as it started to grow, we started to have more people, I started to realize that accountability could easily fall into the whip crack, right? Or it could easily fall into the
negative connotation, perhaps? Like you feel like you're being punished?
Well, it's just a little bit too much like a box, right, that you're being kind of put into. And potentially a bit top down, et cetera. Now, I'm not saying all accountability has to be like this, but I'm saying, especially if it's being delegated to other layers of team and management and things like that, it's an easy slope to slip down under the frame of accountability. Whereas under the frame of camaraderie, with a clear mission and purpose and cascading goals that are clearly measurable, et cetera, then we get the same outcome of accountability. But if the focus is camaraderie first, to achieve a specific objective that's measurable, accountability happens, but there's a much more powerful thing that evolves or is expressed as a result. But accountability is key, right? And it's having other people hold you to the higher standards that you've set for yourself. And I like getting to that through a team and through that level of camaraderie.
Do you find that there's a difference between the meaning of accountability, camaraderie, and responsibility? Do you think people in business these days understand the difference?
Well, I think it's really, you get into murky territory, right? It's like, well, and how important are those semantics, right? And so I think to a large degree, we all get to define our own meanings for things. And because, I mean, here's the thing. vision, mission, purpose. You read 5 different books, everyone's going to have a different definition for what mission means or vision means or purpose means, and they're all kind of slightly interchangeable, and one people frames it this way and that way, and it can turn into just word soup.
Sure. But in a team environment, though, that you have if you're all heading in the same direction on a clearly defined journey that we talked about before, having responsibilities and understanding who's responsible for what is key.
To answer your question, it needs to be taught, and or at the very least, it needs to be agreed upon, not taught from a perspective of like your team are ignorant, but maybe reinforced might be a better word, in the sense that accountability is the buck stops at you.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's make it very, very clear. If the website's got to go live, you're accountable to make that happen. If it's not live by close of business on Wednesday, your head's on the chopping block type deal. Or the upside goes to you. That would be accountable. Now, then responsibility, as it would then cascade down to, is you're therefore responsible for making it happen. Now, that might mean you might get someone else to put the website up. That's fine. But if they fail to do it, it's still on you. And so, no, I think those get lost on people. They're a bit confused as the two. Sometimes people think, oh, you're accountable, so I've got to do it all myself, and it feels like a huge burden. Whereas there's this nice, if you get this nice balance right, camaraderie, accountability, responsibility.
So I found that we're responsible for things and we're accountable to people. So I'm not accountable. I'm accountable for completing that task to my board that you talked about. Use the example before about getting a website live. Johnny's responsible for getting the website live, but he's accountable to Glenn for that happening. And Glenn will make sure that he's ticking those boxes and meeting those activities.
Yeah.
Tell me how you go about setting your plan and charting your course for your business.
How deep do you want to go?
Oh, yeah, as deep as you want to take me.
Well, to do that, we'd need to zoom out, because I think of a performance system for business and life, and it's kind of a fractal, so it works together, because I think people can often fall down a rabbit hole and they get far too focused on the business, and it becomes this all-consuming project, and they end up with a very anemic life. And so I kind of feel like there's 3 big principles you got to. Number 1, win the day. Number 2, live the dream. And number 3, make a dent in the universe. And so I'm always trying to think about, how do I win the day? How do I live the dream? And how do I make a dent in the universe? How do I make a real impact? And so if that was to split off, if you like, I think there are 3 factors. Well, the first is success requires the ability to influence, right? And I think influence is the ability to have an effect in the world. The more of an effect we can have, the more influence, the more success, and that cascades into business and life. So that's a big umbrella for me. Success requires the ability to influence.
Understand. Let's go back to winning the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, actually, if I can go around it this way, because winning the day is a part of the broader kind of architecture. So we'll definitely get there, because winning the day is about rituals. It's about making sure you wake up with the energy you need to execute. But the energy is just one of the 3. So the 3 factors of influence that I think about, for me anyway, are time. Number 1, right? Time is a major rate limiting factor. The next is energy, and the next is knowledge. I heard a quote once, and I can't remember who it was from, but it says, within the laws of physics, anything is possible with the right knowledge. And I really love that. I think that's kind of a cool mindset to have. Anything's possible. Just got to work out on the table. How, right? And so, all right, in the context of everything's possible, what are my rate limiters? Well, I don't have enough time, and I don't have enough energy, physical energy to an emotional, spiritual, creative energy to kind of make stuff happen. So the way I engineer my system for business performance is designed to make sure that it gives me time, gives me energy, and gives me access to the knowledge I need to expand my influence. If that makes sense. So
understand.
So winning the day also comes back to time. I think time's the most important thing to think about. If you're looking at a business performance system or a life performance system, if you're looking at how to be more accountable and hit more goals and kick it out of the park and all this kind of stuff, for me at least, it comes back to really thinking about time, because that's the one limited resource. We've only got so much of it, right? It's finite. We got this one game that we get to play in this life. So the first thing is to control time. Are you familiar with Parkinson's law?
No, I'm not.
Parkinson's law, and you would have heard of it, maybe just not familiar with who created it, but Parkinson's law says work expands to the amount of time you give it, right? So if you've got an hour to get ready, you'll take an hour. But if you've got 5 minutes to get ready, you manage to get out the door
in time.
In time, right? So if you think of that over the course of a year, there's 365 days in a year, 52 weeks. If you break that into 4 quarters of 13 weeks a quarter, that's what we've got to play with. Now, most people just kind of go through the motions, and I don't really think about that very much. But if you break it down, there are 254 work days in a year. So if you're an employee or just a busy business owner running the same kind of holiday schedule as your team, you'll be at work 9 to 5, 254 days a year, giving you 111 days off if you include weekends and public national holidays. This is in Australia anyway. That's a 70-30 work-play ratio. And I like to think, well, if you were to sit down as a kid and kind of come up with what ratio would you like, would you come up with 70-30?
You wouldn't.
You probably wouldn't, right? No. And so we work with key people of influence, obviously, and I think a good calendar for a key person of influence to run is a 50-50. So if you take the same 365 days, 182 of them are work days. So you've gone from 254 work days down to 182 work days. So that's essentially you've bought an extra 72 freedom days, if you like, and you've tacked it on to your time off, right? Your holidays, if you like. And so that leaves a 50% work ratio and a 50% freedom ratio, let's say. Now, I recommend that should be a bucket list goal for anyone. And I think people should track that and they should work out, are they on track for that or off track for that? Because again, Parkinson's law, the moment you commit to that, that I'm going to only work 182 days a year and the rest I get to do whatever the hell I want. At the start, everyone's going to say, I can't do that. That's hard. That's not possible, etc. Now, of course, it is possible. It's just a matter of how. How do we get the right knowledge? Right? So putting on that constraint forces innovation where we would otherwise get lazy. And what tends to happen is when we're lazy, we just throw more time at the problem and we end up having none.
And so Glenn, with that, do you think that right now, as it stands, early in 2021, that you're living your dream? That was your point 2 that you said.
Oh, in terms of living the dream, 100%.
You're living a dream. How did you get to that point?
Right? Because I didn't have the space to live my dream, right? Other than last year, which is the COVID year, I've been running this for 4.5 years. And it's given me the time, the energy, and the freedom to have a family, live where we want, spend time with my daughter, etc.
So what was happening prior to that? I mean, I did the program and went through the program in 2012. So we're talking 9 years ago. In 9 years ago, what were you doing that wasn't giving you this ability to live your dream and balance what you're talking about?
I was 100% focused on building the business. So I often tell the story. So I started the business with 10 grand in my pocket. 3 years later, we were the 9th fastest growing company in Australia by BRW. 2 weeks later, I'm crying on the wharf at 1 o'clock at night, alcohol free, down at St Kilda, just burnt out. I was in consistently for a year and a half. I was in 3 states a week, 6-7 days a week, nonstop. And I'd built a business that relied entirely
on
me.
Yeah.
Right. I was the mechanism. I was speaking at the conferences. I was doing the marketing. I was making a lot of the sales happen, but I was also doing the management and getting into operations and micromanaging and tinkering and
just on that, this is the stuff that entrepreneurs are all sharing the same problem with.
We're all doing it.
They're all doing it because we all want to, we all believe we are the business.
Well, for me, at least, on reflection, it was just poor design and ignorance of the consequences of just throwing myself at building the business, right? Not realizing that if that is my only design criterion, even if it becomes super successful, right, from a money, and I'm like, think Elon Musk super successful, even if it went to that, you end up with no life. You know, and you hear some of the behind the scenes stories of the Musks and the Bransons and the Oprahs and the things of that nature. And it's like, I'm like, that's not what I want for my partner and my kids and any of that sort of stuff. Like, I have a different way in which I want to live in the world. And so I saw that bleeding away and I was burnt out. And when you're burnt out and you're working so hard and you don't have time to kind of pause, reflect, reevaluate, and really consider. And, you know, a lot of people, well, maybe that's not fair to say. No, maybe it is fair to say. I think a lot of people just go, right? And they don't really stop and think and almost, you know, goal setting and dreaming and operating from the perspective that you can really design a life any way you want it is kind of like, oh, that's that Tony Robbins motivation stuff. And it's kind of dismissed. And then it's like, oh, let me open the cupboard. I've got my 10 suits and I'm going to pick on one. I'm going to get in the car and go to work in a box and I'm going to, you know, work for the man and come home and try and like drink myself or, you know, do something to, you know, and it's like, that's not how I wanted to do it. But because I was kind of seduced by the fact that, you know, I'm an entrepreneur and this and that and growth and awards and that's kind of where that bias came in.
What's interesting is during this period, did you find that your goals, your end, what you were searching for became watered down because you thought that you needed to find more balance? Or did you still attack that with the same vigor?
No, this is the point of Parkinson's law, right? Is that is how do you still achieve in your business while making sure you're also achieving the other goal? I mean, we got to think about what is the point. I had to consider what was the goal of my business. Right? Was it the goal to maximize profits for shareholders? No. Right? And so it became money. Yes, a business should provide an abundance of money, but it should also provide an abundance of time. And it should also provide an abundance of meaning and fulfillment. And so I started making, just after that sort of day, crying, exhausted, just cooked, and beyond my comfort zone, beyond my ability to know what to do next. Totally just like, this is, and the fear of failure and not doing the right thing by my team and, you know, all that.
Responsibility is on your shoulders.
Right.
It's like, I was feeling like you were drowning at that point.
Right. And we love responsibility. We want more responsibility, but there can get to a point where if you don't have the right knowledge to execute, it all starts to, anyway. So that was me. So over time, and this wasn't like an epiphany. This was kind of trying to go, right, what would have stopped me from getting to that point? Right. And if I had have built the business within the trifecta of money, time, fulfillment, then you know, it's understood that within time, I can do the things I need to recharge and create and think and perspective, etc. Especially if I've got energy and I've got knowledge and I've got all those kind of elements. So that was the pain, I suppose, that was the catalyst for the system that I now run and that my team runs on my behalf. Because this was the other key thing. I have a whole mechanism for how I set up my calendar to keep me at that 50-50 ratio or better. Excuse me. But I never seemed to make it work until I was able to hire someone into my business where it's in their job description to keep me out of the business outside of this time frame.
So just to understand that, you've given the responsibility to one of your team members to manage to put the rope around your arms and drag you to where you need to be to keep you on track.
Keep me out, right? Because I'd tinker.
Yeah.
Right? I'd tinker. I'd get in and she just goes, Glenn, we got this. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Because I'd spent so long in the mindset as I think it's this kind of throw over from the culture of the Industrial Revolution that if we're not working, we're not valuable.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're not working, what are you? Well, what's the opposite of working? Broken. What is something valuable if it's broken? No. So there's this whole social hypnosis that if you're doing nothing,
and you're not earning your hourly rate, you're not charging out at your hourly rate.
There's
you've got nothing coming in. 100%.
It's easy to find a guilt. And
that's generational. We're talking
totally.
Your parents, my parents, everybody's parents in our age group. I like how I put our age together then. That was how they thought. You know, you work.
On the back of world wars and recessions and things of that nature, like you can understand where it comes from. But we live in a different time.
Yeah.
Hopefully with COVID and all this sort of stuff, the global economies are robust enough to navigate these lockdowns and all this kind of crazy experiments that I suppose are being run. But if you look back, there's this great chart of the ASX that goes back to the Boer War. And it's a logarithm. And so that includes the world wars. It includes 9/11. It includes the recession we had to have. And it's still just an exponential line of growth and prosperity. Yep. So I'm pretty... If the last 110 years of history is anything to go by, and if we can assume that COVID and the resulting policy isn't going to create a worse effect than the World War I's and the World War II's, over time and distance, things are powering. So I try and find those things to make sure I've got cause for optimism. But I suppose that's my mindset: protect time. And so the way I do that is, first of all, the moment you decide that you're going to go 50-50 ratio, you've got an extra 72 days a year for you, freedom days, right? And if you were to take a calendar, because that's on top of public holidays and weekends.
Yep.
And if you were to just start at January and start filling in blank days, that gives you a block of 3.5 months. Now, that should maybe be a 3-year or a 5-year goal, but for most business owners, myself included, going away for 3.5 months isn't something I could do, nor do I want to do, because that's a lot of time to not be building. And I'm still in build mode, right?
Yep.
And so the second option, which is I think a better option, is to take those 72 days. This is what I've done, and this is what I challenge everyone that's kind of got some momentum in their business to do, because it's a force function that challenges you to innovate, to take things to the next level. So it's actually by forcing yourself to work less, the hypothesis is that will allow you to create and make more. So I take those 72 days and I straight away just take off 52 of those and I create a 4-day week, right? So I go Thursday to Friday. And Monday's off. So instantly I've just got perpetual 3-day holidays throughout the week. Then I've got an extra 20 days. And so what I then do is I break those 20 days up into 4, and every quarter I take 5 of those extra days and I stick them in usually in the last couple of weeks of the quarter. Yep. And so if you're already working 4-day weeks and you drop those extra 5 freedom days in, you can actually create an 11-day chunk. Right?
Yeah.
And for me, for where I'm at in my life, that's a nice sweet spot, which gives me the time, effort, and innovation required to continue to build a growing, successful, thriving business, and allows me to honor my responsibilities to team and shareholders and things of that nature.
Sure.
But it fosters innovation, right? Because it forces myself and the team to go, how do I make sure I'm not building a business that's reliant on me to throw time at fixing problems?
Did you find that once you identified this model and the essence of how important time was for you, did you find, and you talked about shareholders, did you find that you had to sell the idea, position the idea, pitch the idea to your shareholders so they felt supportive? Tell me about that. How did that work for you?
Benefit of being a majority shareholder.
Right. Okay. So that was the way it was going to be, and you just made it work.
Yep.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yep. And I think, look, if I had to sell it though, I don't think it's a hard sell, right?
How would you sell it? How many people listening to this and they hear what you're saying and they think, okay, I've got shareholders and they're not the majority shareholder. They've got to answer to a board. They've got to answer to a group. How would they sell it?
Well, first of all, I'm not usually talking to people that don't have control of their business.
Right.
Right.
My audience, who are listening to this, are people that are.
I see.
There is a percentage of listeners of this that are employees, C-suite executives of companies, and they've got to report to their board. Easy,
right? So the first thing is to really understand, and just do some research on Parkinson's law. Like, it's a real thing. Yep. It's the number one retardant to innovation. Because what we end up doing is just throwing time at the problem, right? And so the moment you constrain the amount of time to do the work, it's not like you're just going, hey, and whatever results happen as a result happens. It's like, that's going to happen and my performance is going to go up.
Yep.
Right. And then if you're running the performance system, I also have this is why I asked, right? How deep do you want to go, right? Because there's a whole other mechanism called the Dent operating system, which tracks performance of the company, of the team, and of the individual, like to the letter. So I would be selling it to my board on, judge me by my performance, not my time.
Right.
Time is not a good measure for performance or for success. And I think that should be a pretty easy sell to any executive kind of watching or listening to this.
Yes.
And then let's look at the results, because the hypothesis is, if I constrain the amount of time I have, that's going to force a level of innovation, which is going to lead to a level of performance and results that I couldn't get if I was just burning out, throwing time at the issue. And you could say to the board, are there issues with burnout in this organization? Yes. What cost does that have on innovation and productivity? Huge, right? So this is a proposal for self-enforced balance, rejuvenation, while making sure I'm still committed to the outcome.
And there's immediate relief on the bottom line as a result. Yep.
And so this when I say, the key person of influence calendar, this isn't the pleb calendar. This isn't the calendar that you're going to give to some, numpty in middle management that specifically tried to find an organization with more than 100,000 people in it so they could hide and kind of try and play the ratio of what's the least that I can do to still get paid and not get fired, right? This isn't for that. This is for the type of individual that wants to kick the door off the hinges, that wants to build a career and a business and a legacy that's awesome and that's remarkable.
Sure.
And I just don't feel you can do that working kind of 80 hours a week in the way that, again, I want to live my life.
Understand. But that is usually catalyst for people to break out of that corporate structure and go, bugger this, I'm not doing it that way anymore. I'm going to do it this way. And these are the tools I'm going to use.
I think I asked this question on the end of my podcast, because my nana asked my dad this question, which was basically, if you're on your deathbed looking back, what would be the one big regret? And for him, his big regret, his fantasy regret would have been, if I get to the end of my life and I haven't taken my family around the world on a yacht, I would regret that. And she just looked at him and said, well, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that was kind of the catalyst for doing that. And so
Nana.
Right. And so, or go dad for doing it, right?
Because
lots of people have these moments of epiphany.
Yeah.
And they don't have the courage to execute, right? Because fear is a reaction, but courage is a choice.
So, Glenn, when you were back on the dock, you were sitting on the dock and you had tears coming out of your eyes, was that your moment of fear?
Was that my moment of fear? The overwhelming feeling at the time was exhaustion. I'm not sure if it was fear. Of course there was fear. Yeah, it was the fear of what that exhaustion was going to cause. But I kind of had this part of me that was like, if I had more energy, if I had more time, right? This is why the time, the energy, and the knowledge are my three big things,
they're
right?
linked. Yep.
They're big because if I know what to do, if I can, and I could ask the right person to work out what to do.
Yep.
If I have no time because I'm just up to the gills, and if I have no energy because I'm burnt out because I got no time, and if, like, when I look at the Gregorian calendar and I look at the way it's structured for workers. It's structured for productivity and gross domestic product. It's not structured for, people to have a luxurious, relaxed lifestyle. It's gross domestic product. And when you look back to the Henry Fords and the Carnegies in terms of they funded schools to run with the bells and the clocks and the lines facing an instructor, et cetera, to model the factory floor. And, that's just all continued.
That's the mindset. That's the mindset of the people that are creating these. That's the way it was.
It's a cultural legacy. It's a cultural hypnosis. It's a cultural legacy. Yeah. And I just think, we live in such an incredible time where we have the opportunity to pause and reflect. And if we take extreme ownership of our life,
good on
you. If it means, it's like you leaving Apple, last time we spoke, you were talking about you'd been in the room with Jobs 4 times. That doesn't happen unless you're kicking the door off the hinges in your career. But you said, stuff this, like, where's my lifestyle? Where's, the adventure that I wanted in my life? I'm spending all of my time and emotional energy in this environment, and I think you had the same seduction as I had with business. It's like I'm working with Apple, I'm working with Jobs, like go, 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 until all of a sudden it's like, whoa, hang on.
So Glenn, let me give you this picture, right? I felt like I was running on I was on a treadmill. At the gym, you're on a treadmill, and I was just, pounding away to keep my balance. And someone every so often would walk past and turn the speed up without me knowing. And I'm going, shit, got to keep running. And I'm, looking down at what I'm running, not looking at the world and seeing things. I'm just hoping to, like hell, that I wasn't going to fall off. That's not an existence that suits my lifestyle.
Now, I accidentally built a business that did that as well. Yep. Right, I was the owner of the business, right? But I was the tail on the dog, I built a money and time eating monster.
Yeah.
And so while we were the ninth fastest growing company in Australia, organizationally, it was just ripping itself apart.
Yep.
From the inside. And so in those early couple of years, from you doing the KPI program, that's what was going on in my world. It was this. I'm getting all the success that I thought I wanted, but oh my God, it's killing me, literally.
Yeah, understand that. So Glenn, you talked before about that moment when you found the right person in your organization that could help you.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like? How did you find that person? What was sort of share with us some of the traits you were looking for that you really needed?
Well, so the first thing was, so if we step back to this idea of vital and functional.
Yep.
Right. And if you apply that to time, right, I had to look at, what was the things that if I applied myself to those things were vital, were the essential, were the force multipliers. Yep. And then what was everything else?
Yep.
And I think one of the traps that I'd fallen into is I'd become a manager, and I'm a bad manager. A manager is not my superpower.
Why would you say that? Why would you say you're a bad manager?
Excuse me. Why would I've never been asked that question before. Why would I say I'm a bad manager? There's not enough new in the role. So a good manager doesn't want to keep creating new stuff all the time. They're not the type of person that's having 100 new ideas a day, of which most of them are shit, but they're not that person. They're the sort of person that doesn't really come up with a lot of new ideas in terms of new. But what they can do is they can take an existing idea and think about how to make that better, right? And that requires a level of patience, diligence, and this, I would say, this repetitive kind of a process of doing the same day over and 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 over, but tinkering to make it better. Now, for some people,
Yeah.
Now, this is not a broad blanket, but this is me, right? Because you said you wanted how I worked and how I thought about it. So for some people listening, you got to tune in and go, am I an ideas person? Am I a creative person? Am I coming up with all sorts of stuff? Or am I better at systems, processes, consistency, stability, etc.? So the moment you put me in manager, I'm tinkering, I'm innovating, I'm coming up with shit, which is not what a manager does, right? A manager is really like, how do we take the status quo of what's working and continue to do it over and over again? I say a lot, like, and Apple's a good example, right? Apple spent a fortune innovating the iPhone, right? They spent money. So innovation is expensive. Where they made their money is just selling the thing over and 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 over again, right? Yep. So there's this creative phase and there's this execution phase.
Right.
So innovation is expensive, right? It's the consistency. It's the boring stuff that's where the money's made. So you take me and put me into the boring stuff, the management, the day-to-day, the making sure the trains run on time, etc. I'll start tinkering, right? And I'll start bringing the expensive innovation into something that should be protected as execution. And so
I know you well enough to say that patience is not a thing that you have a lot of.
No, right? Which is why I need a system like this,
a structure
to give me the rules of the game that I'm playing, right? And that creates a lot of freedom. It creates a lot of like, I get where my strengths are deployed.
Yes.
And my team are very clear on the game that's being played as well. So I needed to find someone who didn't want to come up with a new idea, right? That was quite happy to take the 100 ideas of mine and try and filter them down to the one or two that were any good and practical, and not just me, recharging through the creation of bright, shiny object chasing, because that's kind of part of it. It's like maybe a bit of this and a bit of that. And in the 100 ideas of the two that work, the exploring the other 98, a little bit from each of those might turn into, something new later. So I had to go there to synthesize, not what you want in a manager.
No. And there's a lot of time disappearing out the window here.
Well, this is the other thing that I meant to say when you were talking about how to get the executive to sell it, right? Because when I constrain my time into the 4 days a week, into that quarter, and I've also gone the extra step and I've constrained it into a 6-hour day. So it's between 10 and 4. So my team can only book stuff for me to serve the company between the hours of 10 a.m., 4 p.m., Monday to Friday. That's all they've got.
Yep.
Now, if I'm looking, because I can't help because of my nature to come up with stuff and create stuff, right? That doesn't fit inside those times. I get to do that on my weekends if I want to, because I can't help it, right? I'll get up at 5 o'clock and do stuff, because to me, that's the fun. That's the freedom. That's the me being an empire builder, right? And it's not the stuff that you can schedule. So my team couldn't put a 3-hour chunk in that time and go come up with something cool, right? Or write a blog or do a video, right? Often, like when I have to do a video or have to write some material, I don't enjoy it. But when I can wake up with an epiphany and go, I want to create this. And so it's not like I'm not, and this system, it's not like all this new 72 freedom days a year that you've got. It's not like you're not going to use some of those to create your empire. Just you don't have to if you don't want to.
I understand.
Sorry, I forgot your question because I went off on that tangent.
Mate, we're going down lots of different paths here.
Rabbit holes.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Want to look to rewind the clock back to when you and Daniel Priestley, your business partner, were knocking around in Maroochydore, is that right?
Yeah, Sunshine Coast,
Sunshine
Queensland.
Coast, okay. So you were knocking around there as a couple of 16, 17-year-olds?
Yep.
When you decided you want to go into business, when was the first moment you decided you wanted to do that?
Together or business in general? Because I started my first business before Dan and I worked together.
Yeah, look, probably with you and Dan.
So I went to Sydney in the year 2000 and was working in a bar, throwing bottles around, trying to be Tom Cruise out of Top Cocktail.
Did that work for you?
That was awesome. Yeah, it was an epic year. It was, you can appreciate all the things that a young 19, 20 something would want to be doing with the Sydney Olympics. Like, it was epic in Sydney. It was Sydney's, like, in my opinion, Sydney's heyday. It was just, there was an energy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, working in sort of high-end bars with high-end girls was a lot of fun at the time, shall we say. But I quickly did the math and kind of, in fact, one of the best things that happened is one of the guys that I was working with was like 42 and he was still a bar manager.
Yeah.
And, we went back to a party at his place and I'm looking around going, I don't want to be doing this in like 20 more years. And so I decided I should go to university. I decided I should get a business degree because that's how I'm going to learn about business, of course. So I actually went back to the Sunshine Coast and I was trading Forex at the time. So I was doing hand charting, the spot currency markets. I had all around my room these hand charts with multiple time frames.
There was no tech in those days.
No tech in those days. I was literally getting the share price index out of the newspaper, maybe the newspaper. And anyway, so I was doing that. I was running a search and rescue scuba diving business. So not for people, but for lost stuff. And I did some boat cleaning and things like that just to make some money while I was doing uni. Met Dan at the same time. He was in a sales job.
You guys had gone to school together and then...
Sorry, we'd gone to school together, but then we both went our separate ways while we went on our little kind of life adventures.
Yep.
And then we both happened to be back on the Sunshine Coast at the same time. And now at the end of my first year of uni, I finished number 2 in my class.
What class was that?
Business, I can't remember it. International business and commerce, I think was the nature of the degree. And after the first year, I'd aced it. And there wasn't a single thing. I was doing about 150 grand a year in my boat cleaning, search and rescue kind of business around that, which is not bad for a 19-year-old.
Fantastic.
20-year-old. And not a single thing that I'd learned in that year at a business class could I work out how to apply to business, my actual business. And so I went around and I spoke to a whole bunch of my clients that owned big successful boats and massive mansions up in Minyama and throughout the Mooloolaba area there. And they all just said, the only way to do it is to start your own business. Surround yourself with people that have got the results that you want, of which none of my lecturers had. I think the piece de resistance was one of them had written a textbook that was the textbook for the business course at the university, right?
Wow.
It's like,
None of them have ever walked the talk.
No, right? It wasn't like Harvard or a Stanford or something. At least you hear about, Steve Jobs comes in and, does a class and what have you. It wasn't that. And so I was kind of having that experience where I was being told, surround yourself with people that have got the results that you want, number one. Number two, own a business. Dan was in sales at the time, having the same epiphany. And that's where, and he came round to my place and saw all the share trading sorry, it wasn't Forex at the time. It was futures. And then I evolved to Forex. It was trading the share price index. And because of that, we're just like, oh, wow, we're on the same page. We're about making money. Let's go do something together.
And did you guys, bring it back to, the camaraderie we started talking about, the accountability we started talking about. How was it like, two young guys working together, trying to create their own destiny? How do you two guys bounce off each other? Or did you, in fact?
Yeah, no. So we're super lucky. Both we've known each other for a very long time and we'd always got along. As we got to know each other more, we found that our core common values were very aligned in the sense of we want to be successful, we want to have families. It's more about the family and the adventure than the celebrity and the lifestyle. Like, we weren't looking for private jets or shit like that. Integrity, we didn't want to make a buck at the expense of someone else. Like, all those sort of big things were pretty well set. The the next big thing that is really consistent with both of us is just we don't do drama. We're allergic to drama.
What does that mean?
Oh, mate, you know how like people get into like water cooler gossip and this and that.
And the bullshit.
All the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Molehills into mountains and all that for ego usually, or politics or some, whatever. We're just not interested.
Yep.
And so what that kind of showed up as is we never sweated the small stuff. So Dan had pissed me off or I'd pissed Dan off. And it's like we'd have a conversation, we'd lock horns, right? Like two elk going at it in the bush. And then literally an hour later, it's forgotten, moved on, and away we go to the big stuff.
Do you think those moments of you and Dan going, at it like, two bulls together, did you find that helped you to consolidate?
Well, and so it's actually now part of the Dent operating system is whenever a decision's made or is being made about something, there is a part of the process that invites debate and challenge.
Oh, okay.
Right? And if no one's debating it or challenging it, someone is nominated to take the opposing view and to argue it.
It's an interesting perspective. Good on you.
Yeah, because, well, first of all, the problem being a business owner or a successful executive, if you're in that leadership role, is you create your own little reality distortion field where it's very easy for people to get into the culture of saying yes.
Yes. Or that's great. Or that's awesome. That's
amazing,
wonderful.
Amazing,
and we're,
right?
Stroking the cat and...
Right. And everyone has the potential for that unless you decide not to allow that to be a culture that could form, right? And so this is part of the extreme ownership and the responsibility of everything. Everything falls downhill, right? If you've got a toxic culture, you've got to look at the head of the fish, right?
Yep.
And so... And so Dan and I locking horns would always be because he had an idea that I disagreed with or found a glitch in the armor that he was looking to gloss over and move on without really reckoning with it, or vice versa. And it was always like, dude, like this or that or, what have you. And that just worked really well because often it would just shape the direction in a more... Well, I don't know.
Yep.
In a way that that was more considered.
Understand. You look now, and you've got Mila, a beautiful young daughter. How wonderful's that? And Dan's got 3 kids.
3.
So you've got to start catching up, mate. Does Sarah know that?
He's got 3. He's got 3 kids in a 3-month lockdown in London right now. Can't leave the house.
Yeah,
and it's like all under the age of 6 at this point, and it's just that would be
it would be really really difficult for everybody. So look back at those times where you and Dan were starting your entrepreneurial journey together, and now you wind the clock forward and you've got responsibilities of a different level with kids and families and commitments and all that sort of stuff. Tell me how much of what you have today and you use today in your business world started from back in those days when you and Dan were making your way, sowing your seeds, building your crops and your farm. Tell me about that. The stuff that you took from those days and you implement now.
Yeah, interesting. In terms of the look and the feel, nothing. But our first business, Triumphant Events, was in the business of promoting speakers. We would put gurus on stage.
Yep.
So essentially we were a promotional business that liked the one-to-many approach with the outcome of helping people improve the quality of their businesses and their lives, right?
Does that differ from what you're doing today?
No, right? Totally different in form, but very similar in function, I guess, or maybe that's even the wrong word. Very similar in outcome, but very different. They're very different in form and function, if you like.
Yep, understand.
So we're now allergic to gurus. We don't like the guru model. We run a business accelerator where we bring in experts in lots of particular topics. I think businesses is far more complex now and nuanced than any one person to trust any one kind of person to navigate that. And And so we like the idea of creating a performance environment where there's different experts, different people with different specialties to solve, specific problems. And part of the accelerator is helping diagnose what's the problem that needs to get fixed and how do we map it to the right person, et cetera. So different from that perspective, but similar from the perspective of, how do we find great people and experts and connect them to people that need that knowledge? There's the knowledge piece again.
Yeah.
Right. To solve the problems in their business so they can have a better business and live a better life. So similar in that regard.
Glenn, mate, I'm going to thank you very much for joining me today. You've given me way more time than we originally talked about, so I appreciate that. The three things that really stand out for me, mate, is time, energy, and knowledge. I mean, I get what you're talking about with time, and having that energy is critical to delivering on the promises and the goals that you have. But if you don't know how to do it, and you don't know where to start, you don't know who are the right people to do it and bring them onto your team, then you don't have anything. And those three things are really key. And I wanted to thank you for today. Tell me, what would you need to do in 2021 to play your best game? The single most important thing you could do.
Follow the process.
Follow the process.
Follow the process, right? Create the plan and then play the plan. The reason that we run obviously key person influence, but the reason we developed the Better Every Quarter and the Dent operating system frameworks is that if I just follow the plan, if I put down my goals and if I track my goals and if I use the mechanisms, that system is designed to drive performance. And then I can just trust that if I just show up and do me, the rest would look after itself, in my experience, right? Because it takes some time to develop this. Where it falls down is where you get too busy or too distracted to run the system. Right. And then, the thread of the sweater starts to get pulled, and all of a sudden the overwhelm and the uncertainty and the chaos, and it's very difficult to communicate.
We're drowning. Yep.
Right. So run the system. And then the system makes everything else possible. I think the great irony is the creative freedom that I think a lot of us want is on the other side of the accountability that comes from, running a performance system, not just in your business, but in your life.
Glen Carlson, may 2021 give you everything that you wish for. I know you're going to play your best game because you just are a dynamo, and I appreciate your time.
Brother.
I appreciate your time today, and it's great to be on the other side of the screen in an interview with you.
I've loved it. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you, Darren. You're a legend.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for your